Greetings, fellow people of YouTube. Warm welcome. It's an honor to have you here at the Saphira Center of Shamanism, where we break down the ancient esoteric practices of shamanism and the occult, bringing them into balance with the deep psyche. My name is Luke, experienced practitioner and mentor of the shamanic and occult sciences. It's an honor to have you here. Thank you for joining. Definitely find me over on Patreon if you're wanting access to powerful occult initiatory systems, technologies, and transmissions. You'll also find in-depth guidance for advanced initiatory systems such as the Sephiroth and the Qliphoth, and the Necronomicon Gnosis, and much more. You can gain access to this at just £20 per month. Second link in the description. Or if you're wanting something more premium, check out the first link for the Saphira Shamanic School, an amazing opportunity to work closely with me whilst gaining access to powerful teachings and initiatory processes. First link in the description. I look forward to seeing you over there. Today we're going to be covering the path of the vampire, a highly misunderstood concept within the realms of occultism. The term occult vampire is something that is going around within the left-hand path community. It is a buzzword, absolute buzzword, with lots of people wanting to engage within the practice of psychic vampirism. There are different ways that one can practice psychic vampirism, and there's different ways in which somebody embodies the vampire archetype. Many people refer to themselves as vampires without taking themselves through the necessary initiatory process that is required to transfigure their energy body and nervous system to actually fall into alignment with that archetype. This is directly linked to the Qliphothic sphere workings, which are designed to greatly transfigure your energy body and shift your consciousness from a seeker into a receiver. The Great Receiver is basically a transitionary point that takes place from a seeker within a multiverse of light, matter, and form to a receiver that feeds off of the multiverse. The idea of the path of the vampire is basically to transfigure your energy body to basically be able to feed off of the multiverse that you are in instead of being fed upon by a predefined system. Now, this doesn't mean that you are becoming obviously completely fully self-sufficient, because obviously we dwell within a light matter multiverse. We all need money, we all need food, all of those things. But the idea is that you are then embodying a lifestyle which is learning how to energetically receive what it is that you need instead of feeling like you have to strive outwards in order to attain it. It's a big inversion of consciousness that takes place when you go through advanced dark matter alchemy. Now, I'm not somebody who uses vampirism to feed off of anybody else. I'm not somebody who uses vampirism to feed off of the vitality of anybody else. However, the only thing that I do feed off of with other people is their illusions. Okay, I devour their illusions. If somebody comes to me for healing, I devour the illusionary constructs that somebody is holding on to. And that's a way that I utilize the Deathic / Qliphothic technology to assist my clients with their endeavors. So there are ways in which you can utilize vampirism to benefit other people as well. But the main vampire path is about learning how to feed off of reality itself instead of being fed upon by the multiverse as a whole. In other words, you are learning how to basically go into the architectural drawing of the multiverse as a whole, understand the underworld and the unconscious realms, utilize death energy to transfigure your energy body to be able to receive your reality and feed off of reality instead of seeking your reality. It's a very big transition and can be quite a painful transition as well, and is one that requires ongoing work. A big part of this is focused around the concept of chakra dissolution. So when you go through a process like the Qliphothic tree, you are embarking on a process that is opening up the dormant aspects of your energetic centers and dissolving illusionary constructs that are binding you to cosmic law, which basically means that the seven chakra system starts to be greatly transfigured. You're basically shattering your different chakras, which causes a gradual but powerful transfiguration that causes the remnants of the energy centers to basically recalibrate into a single vampiric energetic center. Whereas you have the seven chakra system, which basically binds the person and the soul to cosmic order and cosmic law, rotating clockwise and emanating energy outwards. What you're doing by embarking on Qliphothic metamorphosis is that you are transfiguring your different energetic centers, basically ripping them apart bit by bit, and basically causing them to then unify into a single center that is not actually emanating energy, but is actually pulling energy in. So it's a natural process that unfolds when you undergo advanced Qliphothic metamorphosis, particularly when merging your consciousness with vampiric energies such as the Da'ath. The Da'ath, the Qliphothic abyss, is often referred to as the black hole, and what you're doing when you're going through that process is that you are changing your energetic template entirely. And what the stages of initiation that happen after the Da'ath end up doing is basically solidifying that energetic process. And by the time you've finished all of the Qliphothic spheres, you will shoot down the middle of the tree, and all of those changes that you've basically made to your different energy centers and to your nervous system as a whole will crystallize into the physical body, and that is when the chakras will unify into a single center. But the work is not done there. Basically, what you're doing when you're dissolving these energetic centers is that you're dissolving the cosmic law and the light matter that is holding structure in place, which basically means that you are drastically weakening the veil between the conscious and unconscious mind, at which point you then need to learn how to dwell within a physical body after this transfiguration has taken place, at which point it's important to embark on initiatory processes and conscious sequences of initiations that are there to basically help you to navigate the outlands, basically there to help you navigate the nothing space that you are basically thrusted into once you have gone through this dissolution process. Basically, once you've gone through the dissolution, you then need to learn how to consistently feed off of reality. Okay, whereas before you are basically wired into a seven chakra system, a tiered seven chakra system that basically causes your energy to emanate out into the cosmos and maintain the holographic cosmos as we know it. When you're detangling yourself, if you're not feeding, if you're not continuously striving towards your evolution, if you're not continuously seeking a process of being better. I don't mean seeking in terms of actually projecting energy outwards, but I mean actually consciously distributing energy towards your evolutionary path and learning how to actually feed and receive your evolution through consistent shadow integration and through consistent occult path workings. Then what ends up happening is that your system can become dry. Okay, it's a little bit like if you use like a movie like The Lost Boys or something like that, whereby if the vampire doesn't feed, then the vampire is going to die. It's not going to be able to function anymore. It's a very similar concept, okay? What you're doing is that you are committing yourself to an ongoing path of shadow integration and evolution, not something that ends, okay? Many people can go through this transfiguration process of chakra unification without even realizing what's actually happening. And then they stop striving further into their evolutionary process. In other words, they are no longer feeding, at which point they then get lost in the void, lost in dissolution, lost in nihilism, and it causes people to get completely lost in their delusions, which is not uncommon after an initiatory process like that. So we're going to be diving in to the real path of the vampire, how you can undergo this transfiguration in a way that's actually sustainable for your evolution, and how you actually navigate life once you have gone through this transfiguration, once you've gone through the dissolving of cosmic order, and how to actually function as a vampiric entity within a physical body without hurting anybody in the process. So we're going to be discussing this today, so definitely stay tuned. So many people don't realize that when you are interacting with dark matter spirits, which basically means spirits that dwell within the negative polarity and are therefore vampiric in nature, people don't realize that they're having their energy body somewhat vampirized in a helpful way. People don't realize that even when you're interacting with a dark goddess, any spirit that is within the negative polarity is basically going to be triggering an aspect of vampiric metamorphosis for you. Okay, invocation of spirits does trigger vampiric metamorphosis because you're basically having your illusions devoured by this particular entity in a way that fits with the essence of that particular spirit. So it's not like you're interacting with an angel or, say, another light matter deity that dwells within cosmic law as a whole, but you're interacting with anti-cosmic forces that basically have the evolutionary role to feed off of illusion. They devour the falsehood, they devour the false light, they devour the false order. That's the role that the negative polarity has within the cosmos. Okay, the angels, the positive polarity, establish order and structure, and then the negative polarity is what vampirizes the illusions and brings chaos to the order in order to bring balance. Okay, balancing those two polarities within us, within our multiverse. Okay, so when you're willingly welcoming in an entity, particularly through spirit invocation, you're going through an internal dissolution process. Okay, and in my view, when this starts to happen, you start to be pulled into a bigger process than what you can consciously comprehend. Okay, and this doesn't mean that when people are interacting or invoking spirits, they're being sort of pulled towards initiation through the Qliphoth necessarily. But it's often leading that way purely because you start to go through a great transfiguration of your energy body, and therefore that is also translating into the psychological level of consciousness as well. It basically means that you start to go through that transfiguration anyway, bit by bit. So when I first started interacting with the negative polarity, I started to feel a massive expansion in consciousness because the illusionary constructs were starting to fall away and be vampirized by the entities that I was working with. But it got to the point where it's almost like it passed a certain threshold. Okay, I feel like people who dabble with these energies don't necessarily pass the threshold whereby they are no longer a dabbler. And that threshold is basically where you're thrusting yourself in to the dark matter alchemy and committing yourself to it fully. Until you commit yourself to it fully through pursuit of initiation, you will always be a dabbler. This is the thing, at which point you will tap into these energies as and when you need to or want to. You'll go through a level of dissolving, but you won't pass a certain threshold. What happens with dark matter alchemy is that when you pass that threshold, you basically have to throw yourself into it completely. Otherwise, the metamorphosis that you've undergone will become a little bit like an itch that you can't scratch. Okay, it's a little bit like somebody starts to, say, turn themselves into a vampire, but then quits halfway through the metamorphosis. So they're basically walking around like with half a transition that's taken place. Okay, 1 foot in one realm and 1 foot in the other realm. Okay, and it's not necessarily wrong, but it basically means that once you pass that threshold whereby you're like, okay, I've had my fun, I'm no longer focusing on, oh, what spirit do I work with or what spirit do I work with for this. I'm now actually committing to actually becoming a sort of feeder off of the reality that we are dwelling within. I'm actually committing to actually letting the system, or making the system that I've been born into, work for me instead of me working for the system, then you are passing that initiatory threshold. Okay, and that initiatory threshold starts to, once you've surpassed it, things start to accelerate. And this is normally a cutoff point that is brought by, say, initiating into the first sphere of the Qliphoth. It's basically where you're saying to your soul, I'm ready to take this seriously. Okay, so what you're basically changing into is a receiver archetype that is learning how to operate with the polarities inverted. Okay, and what that basically means is that what is negative becomes positive and what's positive becomes negative. As you embark on your initiatory descent into yourself, okay, and you undergo Qliphothic alchemy, what's happening is that you're going through a level of daemonic metamorphosis whereby you are learning how to embody the archetype of the daemon, which basically means you are learning how to function in a way that daemons do from an evolutionary standpoint. Now, it doesn't mean that you are becoming a daemon, but you are learning how to operate as one. Okay, as one that is not actually bound to the constraints of the cosmos by any way whatsoever, and are actually learning how to feed off of the cosmos as a whole. And being within a physical body, going through that process is massive. Okay, it's massive because you're already within a light matter multiverse, at which point you're not rejecting the other polarity, but you're learning how to operate differently within it. This is why people often say that this type of initiatory process does change the person into a different type of organism altogether, because you're then a feeder, a receiver. Okay, you're no longer striving outwards. You're no longer pushing energy outwards. You're no longer searching for your self-worth in the external world, but you are understanding the paradox of descent, and you are living by the paradox of descent, which means that you are unlocking your true light. You are learning that the only way to really evolve is to go inwards, and you are the answer that you need. The ultimate path of sovereignty retrieval. So when you're embodying this vampire archetype, what are you actually feeding off of? You're feeding off of the real currency of the cosmos, of existence as a whole, which is evolution. You're feeding off of evolutionary potential. Okay, if you're wasting your time trying to feed off of other people, then that's not what vampirism is all about. It's not about sucking the life out of people, okay, despite what the movies say. The vampire archetype is magnetism. Magnetism, building a relationship with your unconscious mind to the point where you can consciously cultivate your reality from your unconscious mind. Okay, consciously letting yourself die, building a relationship with death so that you can die consciously. A little bit like the concept of a vampire that never dies. Vampires are, in the stories, in the myths, are always immortal. This is basically what's happening on the soul level. You're not going to leave, this tangible experience, obviously, with your mortal coil still intact. It doesn't mean that, your physical body will never die. But what it does mean is that you're learning how to wake yourself up by undergoing and utilizing death energy. Instead, death becomes something that you don't avoid, but becomes something that you throw yourself into and actually undergo the massive transformation that comes from it. At which point, when you undergo that level of symbolic death and rebirth, you are not bound to death. You're not followed by it your whole life. And it's not just this ominous character, this ominous presence that follows you around. It's something that you're actively working with consciously, and at which point that allows you to die consciously. And that is the symbolism behind the vampire that can never die. When you're feeding off of evolutionary potential, it requires you to continuously work on yourself. Okay, and that's what the feeding really means from that perspective. Okay, you are committing yourself to becoming a devourer of illusion, at which point you are willingly letting the older aspects of yourself die, and then setting yourself free bit by bit. Okay, as you go through the metamorphosis, you're setting free different aspects of yourself. Okay, the Qliphothic sphere workings are basically the gateway into this initiatory path, into this vampire path. Okay, and many people don't realize that this is what the path is about. The path is about transfiguring your system so that you can function as a void entity within a tangible experience. And people don't realize that you need to keep feeding. Okay, if you change yourself into a vampire through this realistically extremely powerful but potentially dangerous metamorphosis that comes from Qliphothic initiation, you need to keep feeding. Okay, you need to keep distributing energy towards the things that are going to attain your highest evolution. Okay, whereas what most people do, and this is why so many people lose the plot after going through the Qliphothic initiation and vampiric metamorphosis, because they've transfigured their energy body into this great receiver archetype, and then they stop feeding. Okay, they stop feeding. They're changing the way that their energy body receives energy. They're changing the way that they function in the cosmos, and then they're not seeing it through. It's stupid. It's completely stupid. Don't embark on a process of dark matter alchemy, of genuine dark matter initiation, if you do not want to feed off of reality. And feeding off of reality does not mean hurting other people. It means actually feeding off of evolutionary potential. It means continuously descending into the void. It means continuously integrating the different aspects of yourself. Okay, otherwise the void becomes a labyrinth. Okay, if you don't keep navigating the void and you don't keep moving through it and forging the path, then the void you get trapped in the void. Okay, the void is a dark matter, infinite dark matter space that is not really limited by any false ideas of duality. It's a nothing space, which means it's pure potential, pure fertile soil, at which point your heart needs to keep forging the path for you. This is why the energy centers unify into a single heart center once you've gone through and effectively integrated all of the Qliphothic sphere workings. And that again is symbolic of the vampire archetype, because it's, it's known that the vampire's sort of, what you don't want to say weak spot, but yeah, it's almost like, the vampire's weak spot is the heart ultimately. Okay, so this is basically symbolic of the fact that your heart space, your heart, becomes the guidance of your reality. You're no longer navigating your reality from needing to see what's ahead of you, but you're basically training yourself to be able to see and navigate the darkness without actually being able to, or without actually being able to see predefined and pre-imposed order and clarity. And many people are not ready for that. Okay, they're not ready, to be navigating the void space, to be navigating their lives from a place whereby they're no longer becoming reliant on external clarity and pre-imposed order. Okay, you're basically detangling yourself from that reality. Okay, unwiring your nervous system from the cosmos as a whole, and then you need to learn how to navigate that space. You need to learn how to navigate the void, and ultimately you need to keep feeding. You need to keep embarking on your evolutionary process. You need to keep feeding off of evolutionary potential. Okay, you then become a devourer of falsehood. Okay, and this does have a very interesting ripple effect on those around you as well. Okay, the people that were around me as I was going through my Qliphothic initiation process, and as I continue to go through my ongoing initiatory process, they are also going through massive phases of dissolution within themselves, even without interacting with the Qliphothic technology, because it has a ripple effect. Your energy body is now pulling in, which means that you are the black hole to cosmic order. You are the black hole that is pulling in illusion, and those who are close to you, those who are around you, are then going to naturally start being pulled in to a bigger initiatory process than what they can consciously see. Okay, I had friends, particularly as I was going through the Da'ath and the stages after the Da'ath, I had friends that were going through the exact same thing, just in a different format. Obviously, they weren't going through Da'athic initiation, but they were going through a resonant experience, okay? Because once that transfiguration has taken place, basically you are becoming a magnet for falsehood. In other words, you're like a black hole that is literally there, sucking in illusion, devouring it, and understanding what is beyond it. Okay, in other words, you are kind of devouring your falsehood and the falsehood of those around you. Okay, and if you stop devouring falsehood and you do what most people do and try and then hold on to an idea of pre-imposed order and hold on to a concept of needing to be this or needing to be that or needing this level of external clarity, then you get lost in the righteousness, and that is conflicting massively with the path that you have just opened yourself up to. Okay, so don't bother with this chakra unification process. Don't bother with this level of dark matter transformation, and don't bother with anything that surpasses that dark matter alchemy threshold that we spoke about, unless you are actually open and willing to do the continuous work after, do the continuous shadow integration work, keep bringing true light to the darkest aspects of your unconscious mind so that you can ultimately navigate your reality after this massive transfiguration has taken place. Now, there are initiatory systems that one can embark on after this very powerful transformation that can assist a person with actually navigating the void space and actually learning how to attune themselves to a consciousness and develop a consciousness that is not actually dependent on the flow of cosmic law as a whole. There are numerous initiatory systems that have been created by different magicians that are to be undertaken after you've completed the Qliphothic spheres. Okay, the best one that I have come across that teaches you to do this and basically teaches the energy body to navigate within the outlands of the void is an initiatory system that was channeled by Enoch Petrocelli, which is called the Stellar Outlands. Okay, and the Stellar Outlands in his initiatory system are basically done before you embark on the tunnels of Set. So normally you go through the Qliphothic spheres and then you go into the tunnels of Set. In his system, he personally recommends that you go through the Stellar Outlands first in order to basically attune yourself to intangible extraterrestrial consciousness to prepare your vessel for the further dissolution that is needed. Okay, and this initiatory system does play a very important role in doing that and carrying out that particular agenda, which is amazing. Okay, it's also directly linked to Lovecraftian entities as well, and Lovecraftian magic is something that does interlink with vampiric metamorphosis, particularly the workings with the outer gods. Gods such as Nyarlathotep, such as Yog-Sothoth, Shub-Niggurath, Azathoth, and beings like that. They have the literal role of teaching you how to navigate the void space. Okay, and you need to learn how to navigate the void space if you are to basically continuously feed off of evolutionary potential, because what you've done by going through the chakra unification process, by dissolving your energetic centers through Qliphothic metamorphosis, is that you've opened up those gates, and then you now need to learn how to exist within the void. And Lovecraftian magic is very good for that, okay? And that's what the Stellar Outlands by Enoch Petrocelli do definitely link into. They link the Qliphothic work and the Lovecraftian gnosis together, and is sort of framed as an intangible initiatory system that basically attunes you to different islands within the void. But what that's basically doing is setting your roots and foundations into a level of consciousness that is beyond cosmic law as a whole. And when you're setting those roots and foundations into a reality that is actually beyond cosmic law as a whole, then you can use those foundations and use those roots to basically be able to navigate yourself, basically pull yourself through your continuous path of evolution. Whereas without doing that, it's still possible and people do it, but it's almost like, you know, you're dissolving your chakras and then you're going into more dissolution without kind of taking time to kind of calibrate to those different outlands. Okay, and when the primordial beings, if you look at different primordial beings, particularly the outer gods and beings like that, they take on the form often as like big sort of tentacle like beings or like void like spiders. Okay, and you can sort of use this sort of work with the outlands and with actually learning how to navigate the void is basically like establishing your tentacles as a void being and then learning how to kind of shift through the void and embark on that continuous process naturally. Okay, it's a level of metamorphosis that, you know, as I said, many people are not ready for. And the mistake that many people do make is that they finish the Qliphothic sphere workings and they've gone through that big transfiguration, they've grounded everything back into the body, and then they don't continuously feed on evolution. They basically reach a point where they stop evolving, and then that's conflicting with the whole Qliphothic path and the path of the vampire as a whole, purely because that's what patriarchy has wired you to do. Okay, patriarchy has wired you to basically get to a certain point in the pyramid that you're satisfied with and then just stay there and don't evolve anymore. Okay, whereas when you are going through the vampire path and the path of vampiric transformation and metamorphosis, okay, you've got to keep feeding. You've got to keep feeding off of reality. You've got to keep striving for your evolution. You've got to keep going inwards, embodying that path of descent, and basically keep descending, keep descending, keep descending, getting to know yourself more and more, feeding off of your illusions and liberating yourself further and further. Otherwise, you get to a certain point in the evolutionary path and then you stop evolving. And then that's the biggest mistake that people make, even within this light matter multiverse. But then when you've initiated yourself into the void, that's when it becomes dangerous, because you then become completely lost in the void. You become completely lost in it, and you're then not able to navigate it fully. And then the delusions can kick in. I'm a spouse of Lilith. I'm an incarnation of Lucifer, and all of those different types of things. Okay, so the vampiric path, the path of the genuine vampire, is a consistent feeder, okay, a consistent receiver. And what comes with that is a certain level of natural power and magnetism as well. When you're continuously feeding and you're continuously embracing that paradox of descent, it's not called the paradox of descent for no reason. You're descending inwards, you're pulling energy in, but then that's also having a paradoxical effect on what you are radiating as well. In other words, by descending and by reaching the deeper aspects of your unconscious mind, you're vampirizing the cosmos, but in doing so, you're generating more life force energy to be able to create reality altogether. Okay, you're generating more life force energy, building a stronger relationship with the void, which is pure potential, and then you're developing an amazing ability to be able to manifest naturally without sort of trying to consciously manifest. You'll then be manifesting in alignment with your true will naturally, pulling things in as and when you need them. Okay, so it is a very big path of evolution, a very big process of metamorphosis that people don't realize. This is what real dark matter alchemy is about. This is what real self-deification is about. You are learning how to feed, and you are learning how to move yourself back to the void, which is the realm of the true gods. And at which point, when you reach that place and you're continuously going into your shadow and understanding yourself on a different level, you are continuously feeding off of evolutionary potential, at which point you are then shaping the multiverse in accordance with your true will. It is epic, but it is challenging and ongoing. But I think that's everything that I needed to speak about in today's video. Definitely hit like and subscribe if this video was helpful to you. Definitely check out my Patreon, as there's lots of different invocations, different initiatory systems that can guide you through processes like this. But for now, thank you guys, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.